They didn't lower their voices. They didn't hide it. They laughed. Not one person. Several. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind that fills a room and makes sure the target hears it. Someone repeated the joke louder. Someone else leaned back in his chair like this was entertainment. Another man shook his head, smiling, already sure of the outcome. He stood there while it happened. Not on a stage. Not protected. Not introduced with respect. Just standing in the open. Close enough for everyone to see him clearly. Close enough that ignoring the laughter would be impossible. The room was full. Not crowded with noise, but crowded with confidence. A training space. Hard floor. Old marks on the walls. The smell of sweat that never really leaves. Men sat along the edges. Some leaned against the wall. Some stood with their arms crossed. These were not beginners. Their bodies showed it. Hands thick, shoulders relaxed but ready, faces calm in a way that only comes from experience. They didn't move fast. They didn't need to. They owned the space. A few of them looked at him openly, not curious, judging. One man let out a short laugh through his nose. So this is him, not a question. Another voice answered quickly, he's small. That one got more laughter. Not because it was clever, because it was easy. Because everyone felt safe agreeing. He didn't move. His face didn't change much. No anger, no smile, just still. That made the laughter continue longer than it would have otherwise. Because mockery needs reaction. It needs something to bounce off. Someone shifted closer, not touching him, just stepping into his space. A quiet message. You are surrounded. The man looked him up and down slowly. Then he smiled. Is that it? He said, half joking, like he already knew the answer. More laughter. The room relaxed even more. Chairs creaked. Someone stretched his legs. They had decided who he was, and they wanted him to accept it. No one stopped it. No one corrected it. That silence gave permission. Another man spoke louder, aiming his words at everyone. I've heard stories, he said. Stories always sound better than the real thing. Heads nodded. This wasn't about truth anymore. It was about position. If he stayed quiet, they would remember him as weak. If he reacted badly, they would remember him as unstable. Either way, the room would keep control. The laughter slowed, not because it ended, but because the room was waiting for him to respond, waiting for the moment where a man either breaks or proves he never mattered. He stayed still, and that was when the air began to change. Not loudly, not suddenly, just enough that someone near the door stopped smiling. Just enough that a man along the wall adjusted his stance. The laughter faded into a quiet that felt uncomfortable, too quiet. Someone cleared his throat. Another man shifted his weight. They were still confident, but now they were watching more closely, because when mockery doesn't land, it starts to feel risky. He looked around the room slowly, not searching, not challenging, just looking, and the room waited. The quiet stayed longer than anyone expected. Not peaceful quiet, the kind that makes people uncomfortable in their own bodies. Someone shifted their feet. Someone else folded their arms tighter. A chair made a small sound against the floor. The laughter was gone now, not replaced by respect, replaced by waiting. They watched him closely, waiting for anger, waiting for words, waiting for anything that would confirm what they already believed. He didn't give it. He stood with his hands loose at his sides, not clenched, not ready to swing. His shoulders stayed low, relaxed. That bothered them, because confidence usually speaks, or threatens, or pushes back. This one didn't. A younger man near the front tried to pull the room back into control. So, he said, smiling again, nothing to say. No one laughed this time. The smile stayed on his face too long, then faded. Eyes moved around the room, checking if anyone else would help him. No one did. That's when the space began to feel smaller. Not because people moved closer, But because attention narrowed, every eye stayed on him now. He lifted his head slightly. Not proud, not challenging, just enough to meet their eyes. He looked at one man, then another. Not fast, not slow, the kind of looking that makes people aware of themselves. A man along the wall stopped leaning and stood straight. Another uncrossed his arms without realizing it. Someone breathed out slowly. Still, no reaction from him. That's when a man stepped forward. Older, thick neck, confident walk. He had the kind of confidence that came from never being questioned. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Show us something," he said. Like it was a joke. Like it wasn't. A few men chuckled softly. Not loud this time. "Careful." The man gestured with his hands, copying movements poorly on purpose, making it look small, making it look silly. That crossed a line. Everyone felt it. The room leaned in, not physically, but mentally. Now silence would look weak. Now reaction would look desperate. This was the moment they wanted. He didn't rush it. He let the moment sit there, long enough for the man's smile to feel heavy on his own face, long enough for the room to realize something wasn't going the way it usually does. Then he turned his head slightly, just slightly. He looked toward the side of the room where equipment was stacked. Old pads, worn surface. Nothing special. A normal object in a normal room. He spoke. His voice was calm, not loud. "Bring that here." No emotion in it. The request landed quietly, but it changed everything. A man near the equipment froze for a moment. He didn't want to move, but standing still felt worse. So he picked it up and walked forward, each step slower than the last. He handed it over without meeting his eyes. The room watched closely. Some expected a show now. Some expected failure. He took the pad and stepped aside. Not away from them, just enough to clear space. No one spoke. The man who had mocked earlier stepped forward again, still smiling but less sure now. "All right," he said. "Let's see it." The pad was raised. The room held its breath without knowing it. He stood there. No warm-up, no movement. Still. Then, a small shift. A single motion. Nothing wild. Nothing fast enough to impress the eye. Just one clean action. The sound was sharp and short. The man holding the pad slid backward. Not falling. Not jumping. Sliding. His breath left him suddenly. Not planned. Not controlled. His face changed before he could hide it. The smile vanished. That was the moment. Because everyone saw it. The room went silent again. But this time, it wasn't waiting. It was processing. The silence after it was heavy. Not cheers. No gasps. No loud reaction at all. Just Kit. The man who had been holding the pad stood still for a moment. Too still. Like his body needed time to understand what just happened. He adjusted his feet slowly. Took a breath that didn't fully fill his chest. Lowered the pad a little, then raised it again like he wasn't sure what to do with his hands. His eyes were different now. Not angry. Not afraid. Alert. That change did not go unnoticed. A man along the wall straightened his back. Another shifted his stance, feet wider apart. Someone who had been smiling earlier pressed his lips together and looked down. The room had felt loose before. Comfortable. Certain. Now it felt measured. No one laughed. No one spoke. They were all replaying the same moment in their heads. Not what they saw. What they felt. Because it wasn't about strength. It wasn't about speed. It was about how little effort it took. The man with the pad stepped back once. Then again. Not in retreat. In respect. He set the pad down carefully, like it suddenly mattered where it landed. He didn't say anything. And that mattered more than words. The man who had been loud earlier tried to speak. That was... He stopped. There was nowhere safe to finish the sentence. The room no longer belonged to his voice. A few people glanced at him, then away. Not mocking, not supportive, just distant. The balance had shifted. Bruce didn't look around for reactions. He didn't watch faces change. He turned and placed the pad back where it came from. Slow, ordinary, like nothing important had happened. That unsettled them more than anything else, because the moment had mattered to everyone else, just not to him. An older fighter near the back took a step forward, not aggressive, careful. Studied Bruce quietly, longer than anyone else had. Then he nodded once. No smile, no words. That single motion carried more weight than the laughter from earlier. The circle around Bruce loosened without anyone deciding to loosen it. Space appeared, not given loudly, given instinctively. A younger man who had been closest earlier took a half step back. Another turned sideways instead of facing him directly. No one challenged. No one joked. The room had changed rules without announcing it. Bruce stood there for another moment, calm, still. Then he shifted his weight slightly, as if he was about to leave. No one stopped him. No one followed. The room watched him move like you watch something that no longer needs permission. When he passed by, conversations didn't restart. Laughter didn't return. People stayed quiet, pretending to focus on anything else. Because once confidence breaks in a room like that, no one wants to be the one who pretends it didn't. Later, some would talk about it. They would argue about how strong it was, how real it was, whether it meant anything, but none of them laughed again. Not that day. Not around him. And everyone in that room understood something they didn't want to say out loud. They had mistaken silence for weakness. The room did not return to normal. It tried to, but it couldn't. People shifted positions like they were rearranging furniture after something heavy had been dropped. Not broken, just moved everything out of alignment. A few men pretended to stretch. One picked up a towel and wiped his face, even though he wasn't sweating. Another looked at the floor longer than necessary, like he had lost something there. No one made eye contact for a moment. The loud energy from before was gone, not replaced by fear, replaced by awareness, the kind that makes people careful with their words. Someone finally spoke from the side. Soft, neutral. "All right," he said, like he was closing a conversation that had never officially started. No one responded. Bruce stood near the edge of the space now, not hiding, not rushing out, just present. A man who had laughed earlier glanced at him, then looked away quickly, not embarrassed, corrected. Another fighter leaned toward a friend and whispered something. The whisper wasn't mocking anymore. It was low, serious. Whatever he said made his friend nod slowly. The man who had held the pad stayed quiet. He rolled his shoulders once, like he was shaking off a memory. He did not look at Bruce again, because looking again would invite something he wasn't ready for. The older fighters watched from a distance now. They weren't impressed. They were recalculating. That kind of respect doesn't come with smiles. It comes with space. Bruce took a step toward the exit. No one moved to block him. Earlier, bodies had closed in without thinking. Now they opened without being asked. As he passed, conversations did not follow him. Jokes did not restart behind his back. The room stayed quiet, not tense, settled. He reached the doorway and paused for a brief moment. Not to look back, not to wait. Just a natural pause, like someone letting a door close properly. Someone behind him shifted their feet. Another man cleared his throat. Still, no words. Bruce left. The door closed without noise, and only then did the room breathe again. Not relief, release. A man near the center shook his head slightly, like he was still trying to understand something. Another sat down slower than usual, careful with his weight. Someone laughed quietly, then stopped himself halfway through. The sound felt wrong now. No one encouraged it. One of the older fighters finally spoke again. "Enough," he said calmly. Not angry. Final. People nodded. Training resumed. Movements restarted. But everything was different. The laughter didn't come back. The jokes didn't land. And every man in that room knew why. They had seen confidence disappear without a fight. They had watched control change hands without noise. And that kind of moment doesn't need to be discussed. After that day, people spoke about it quietly. Not right away. Not in front of others. Later, in smaller rooms, between men who trusted each other enough to admit uncertainty. Some said it wasn't a big moment. Some said it was exaggerated. Some said they'd seen harder things. But when they spoke, their voices stayed low, because everyone in that room remembered the same feeling. The moment when laughter stopped working. The moment when confidence realized it had been borrowed, not owned. No one argued about what he did. They argued about what it meant. And that's how you know something mattered. The man who had mocked the loudest never joked like that again. Not with Bruce. Not with anyone like him. He didn't avoid training. He didn't disappear. But he listened more. Watched more. He learned something that day without being taught. Others learned it too. They learned that power doesn't need noise. That control doesn't announce itself. That some men don't rise to meet mockery. They let mockery expose itself. Bruce Lee didn't return to that room often. He didn't need to. Because rooms remember. They remember how they felt when their confidence slipped. They remember who didn't rush. Who didn't explain. Who didn't demand respect. They remember who stood still while everyone else talked. People would later tell new faces, quietly, don't underestimate him. Not with excitement, not with praise, just as a warning. Because once you've seen a room full of experienced fighters go silent, not from fear, not from violence, but from certainty, you don't laugh the same way again. Not in that room, not in any room where the story traveled. And the story always traveled. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was clean. No shouting, no speech, no celebration. Just a moment where everyone understood, at the same time, that they had misjudged the wrong man. And once that understanding settles in a room, it doesn't leave.